It's been 12 years. Yet every morning, Detective Harris starts his day the same way, by staring at that photograph. A young woman frozen in time, a porcelain doll shattered beside her, blood smeared like brushstrokes, eyes wide, glassy, like they saw too much, too late. They called it the glass doll murder. Solved, filed, forgotten. But Harris never believed it. Not really. There were too many details that didn't add up. Too many whispers left behind in the silence. This wasn't just a crime, it was a message, and he's still trying to read it. It was a cold spring morning when the call came in. Abandoned property, 3rd floor, broken window. What the officers found inside would haunt them for years. In the center of a dimly lit room sat the body of a young woman, carefully positioned in an antique rocking chair. Her limbs weren't stiff with rigor. They were arranged purposefully, like part of a display. She wore a Victorian dress, white lace trimmed with pale blue ribbon. Her face had been painted, delicately, with the kind of precision that required both patience and obsession. Rosy cheeks, crimson lips, eyes outlined just so. She looked less like a murder victim and more like something you'd find behind glass in a museum of strangeness. Beside her feet, a shattered porcelain doll lay in pieces. Its face, eerily, was an exact replica of hers. The same paint, the same expression. Only the doll's smile had cracked in half, splitting down the middle. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, not a single fingerprint. No blood trail, no hair, no fibers. The only clue? A small piece of parchment folded neatly into the woman's hand. On it, handwritten in fine ink, "Perfection has a price." Detective Harris was the first to enter the room. He didn't speak. He simply stared. And in that moment, something clicked. Not in fear, but in recognition. He knew right then. It wasn't a message. It was a signature. The investigation moved fast. The public demanded answers, and the department delivered. Within a week, they named their suspect, Thomas Rayner, the victim's ex-boyfriend, a reclusive artist with a flair for the disturbing. He had a history of obsession. Neighbors claimed he talked to his dolls, treated them like muses. His apartment was filled with antique toys, paintbrushes, and journals covered in sketches of broken figurines. The evidence, while circumstantial, was convenient. He had no alibi. He had motive. And he had once sculpted a porcelain piece that looked just like her. Under pressure, he confessed, but days later, he recanted everything. Claimed he was coerced, that he was innocent. Nobody listened. Days after that, he was found dead in his cell. Suicide, they said. The case was closed. But for Harris, the story didn't sit right. The confession came too fast. The motive was too clean. And most of all, Thomas's artistic style didn't match the crime scene. His works were rough, raw. The scene in that room, it was meticulous, refined, controlled. The confession was too neat. The details didn't line up. And the real artist? He was still out there, sculpting his next scene. And Harris knew. This wasn't the first time this artist had struck. He just had to find the others. And once he did, the pattern began to emerge. With the case officially closed and the file buried, Harris went rogue. Nights turned into weeks. His office desk left cold, while his kitchen table transformed into a maze of old newsprint, photos, red thread. He combed through every unsolved case that hinted at the strange and the staged. It wasn't long before he found the first one. 4 years before the glass doll case, across state lines, a young ballet student had been found dead in a rundown apartment. Her body was positioned mid-arabesque, which means standing tall, one leg back, arms out like wings. Around her were dozens of music boxes, all playing the same haunting melody on loop. Cause of death? Unknown. No forced entry. No evidence. Just one strange detail. A handmade doll placed at her feet, with a painted face nearly identical to hers. Another case surfaced, this one even older. A woman discovered inside a makeshift snow globe diorama, the room coated in artificial snow and mirrors. Her face frozen in terror, posed to appear lifelike, as if she'd been caught mid-scream. And again, the doll. Same glassy eyes, same cracked smile, same blood-red lips. Harris's obsession sharpened. The similarities were undeniable. Each victim transformed into a piece of some private gallery, each scene a twisted portrait. He wasn't looking at a killer in love. He was looking at an artist with a singular, morbid vision. This wasn't a lover's rage. This was a collector's obsession, and Harris was now part of the collection. But what he didn't expect was to be contacted directly. It arrived just after midnight. No return address. Just a thin, unmarked envelope slid under Harris's door. Inside was a single Polaroid, grainy but unmistakable. A woman, breathing, but barely. Eyes closed, limbs arranged like porcelain, lips freshly painted, her pose identical to the others. But this time, she wasn't dead. On the back of the photo, 6 chilling words, scrawled in delicate handwriting. She's not perfect, yet. There was a timestamp in the corner, barely visible, but recent. Harris's pulse spiked. She was alive, somewhere, and the artist was still working. No badge, no backup, just him. He didn't tell the department. He knew what they'd say. Instead, he followed the few clues hidden in the image. Peeling velvet curtains, old rigging above the woman, stage lights packed away in the shadows. He recognized it. The abandoned Mayfair Theater, shut down for fire code violations years ago. But some say the lights inside still flickered at night. Harris didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, his flashlight, and the rusted key he'd once kept from a previous search. As he approached the crumbling structure, the sound of a distant music box echoed faintly through the walls. What he would find inside would change everything. The air inside the Mayfair Theater was thick with dust and varnish. Harris moved quietly, flashlight sweeping over velvet curtains, cracked stage boards, and mannequin limbs suspended from the rafters. Then he found it, the workshop, a macabre studio carved into the theater's backstage. Rows of porcelain heads lined shelves. Half-finished dolls, glass eyes unblinking, stared from corners. And in the center, beneath a beam of stage light, stood her. She was poised, graceful, wearing a painter's smock over a black dress, her hands stained with pigment and resin. Calm as a museum guide, she greeted him. Detective Harris, right on time. Her name was Evelyn Crane, once a celebrated mannequin sculptor for luxury window displays, her work praised for its eerie realism. But then she vanished from the art world, and here she was again, preserving beauty in the only way she knew how, by freezing it. "They called me mad for chasing perfection," she said softly, circling the bound unconscious woman on the table. "But you understood. You saw it." Harris raised his weapon, but she didn't flinch. She stepped closer, holding up the Polaroid he'd received. "You were never chasing me, Harris. I was calling you. You see details others miss. You feel what others dismiss. That's what makes you..." She touched his chest, smiled faintly. "Perfect." The envelope hadn't been a clue. It was an invitation. He wasn't the hunter. He was the final exhibit. A man consumed by obsession, reshaped into something beautiful by it. But Harris wasn't ready to be displayed. He lunged. The struggle knocked over a lantern. Flames licked the curtains. Evelyn's dolls began to melt, glass eyes popping in the heat. She fought like someone protecting her life's masterpiece. But Harris had the upper hand. With smoke rising, he grabbed the unconscious woman and forced open a side door. Alarms blared. The old wood crackled and collapsed. And in the inferno's heart, Evelyn stood still, smiling as the flames consumed her stage. At least, that's what it looked like. No body was ever found. Authorities searched the rubble for days, but nothing remained. No bones, no heat-warped tools, just one scorched porcelain hand, resting where her workshop once stood. Harris was hailed as a hero, reinstated with quiet honors, though he rarely returned to active duty. He changed, grew quieter, more withdrawn, but he never stopped working the cold cases. Years passed, and soon, strange patterns began to emerge. Unsolved crimes with eerie similarities. Victims carefully arranged, no signs of struggle, and somewhere at each scene, sometimes hidden, sometimes obvious, a doll, glass eyes, painted lips, a familiar cracked smile. Some whispered Evelyn had survived. Others believed Harris had brought something back with him from that fire. And if you ask Harris today, he won't say a word, but you might catch him glancing at the shadows, like he's still being watched. They say obsession is a curse, but for Detective Harris, it's the only thing keeping him going. And somewhere the artist still sculpts, waiting for her masterpiece. Do you think the case was ever truly solved? Or did Harris become the only living piece in her collection? Let us know your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more mysteries that may never be closed. Until next time, this Mind Unfolded.